The desert wind howled across the Nevada wasteland, carrying with it secrets that would make most humans wet their pants and run screaming into the night. But not Captain Jake Morrison. No, this stubborn son of a gun had been stationed at Groom Lake for 3 years now, and he'd seen enough weird shit to write a bestseller. If only he wasn't bound by about 50 different non-disclosure agreements that would land him in a cell so deep they'd need a geological survey to find him. Another day, another alien drama, Jake muttered, adjusting his tactical vest as he walked through the underground corridors of what the world knew as Area 51. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like dying insects, casting everything in that special kind of institutional green that made everyone look like they had food poisoning. What the conspiracy theorists got wrong wasn't that aliens existed at Area 51. Hell no, they got the relationship completely backwards. See, the government wasn't hiding aliens from the public. The government was hiding the public from the aliens. And trust me, after what happened in the early days, that was probably for the best. Jake's radio crackled to life. Morrison, get your ass down to level 7. We have got a situation with the Keth delegation. Copy that, Control. On my way. Jake sighed and headed for the elevator. Level 7 was where the real fun happened. That's where they kept the diplomatic quarters, if you could call them that. More like a cross between a 5-star hotel and a maximum security prison, designed to keep very important guests very comfortable and very contained. The elevator descended past levels most people didn't even know existed. Level 1 was just maintenance and storage. Level 2 housed the human personnel quarters. Level 3 contained the research labs where they reverse-engineered technology that made smartphones look like stone tools. Level 4 was medical, equipped to handle everything from human injuries to alien biology that defied every law of physics humans thought they understood. But Level 7? That was where the magic happened. And by magic, Jake meant the kind of interstellar politics that made Washington, D.C. look like a kindergarten playground. The elevator doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a corridor that looked like it belonged on a spaceship rather than underground in Nevada. The walls were a smooth, pearl-white material that seemed to glow from within, lined with what appeared to be windows, but were actually advanced display screens showing real-time feeds from various locations around the galaxy. Morrison, the voice belonged to director Patricia Wells, a woman who'd been running this show since before Jake was born and looked like she could arm wrestle a grizzly bear and win. Thank God you are here. The Keth are getting restless again. Jake fell in a step beside her as they walked down the corridor. What's got their tentacles in a twist this time? The usual. They're demanding to know why we haven't disclosed their presence to the general population yet. Apparently, they're getting tired of hiding in our basement. Jake snorted. Right, because telling 8 billion humans that we have been secretly hosting a galactic refugee camp in the Nevada desert would go over so well. I'm sure that wouldn't cause any mass hysteria, religious upheavals, or global economic collapse. Exactly my point, Patricia said, stopping in front of a door marked with symbols that hurt to look at directly. But try explaining that to a species that thinks emotional stability is a design flaw. The door sensed their approach and dilated open like an iris, revealing what could only be described as organized chaos. The Keth diplomatic suite was a study in controlled mayhem, with beings that looked like a cross between octopuses and liquid mercury, floating in specialized atmosphere pods while conducting what appeared to be 17 different conversations simultaneously. Ambassador Velkanth, the closest thing the Keth had to a leader, flowed toward them in a movement that was part swimming, part flying, and entirely unsettling. When it spoke, the words formed directly in their minds rather than through any recognizable vocal cords. Director Wells, Captain Morrison, your species continues to delay the inevitable revelation. Our patience grows thin. Jake had learned early on that dealing with telepathic aliens required a certain mental discipline. Think the wrong thing, and you could accidentally start a diplomatic incident. Think too hard about not thinking the wrong thing, and you'd give yourself a migraine that lasted for weeks. Ambassador, Patricia said with the kind of diplomatic smile that could cut glass. We have discussed this. The integration timeline exists for good reasons. Your people have been safe here for 37 years. Rushing things now could jeopardize everything we have built. 37 years of hiding. Velkintha's mental voice carried undertones of frustration that felt like ice picks in Jake's brain. 37 years of watching your species stumble toward technological adolescence while we remain shadows in your underground facilities. Jake stepped forward, knowing he was probably about to say something that would either defuse the situation or get him transferred to count penguins in Antarctica. With respect, Ambassador, you have seen our news broadcasts. Half our planet is convinced that wearing masks during a pandemic is a government conspiracy. How exactly do you think they'd react to finding out we have been hosting actual aliens? A ripple of what might have been amusement flowed through the Keth's translucent form. Your species' capacity for denial is impressive. It's not denial, Jake continued, warming to his theme. It's willful ignorance mixed with a healthy dose of fear and a complete inability to process information that doesn't fit into pre-existing belief systems. We have got people who think the Earth is flat, climate change is a hoax, and that Elvis is still alive and running a taco stand in Memphis. Adding aliens to that mix isn't going to go the way you think it will. Patricia shot Jake a look that could have melted steel, but Ambassador Velkinth seemed genuinely curious. Explain. Right now, you're safely hidden. The government denies you exist, conspiracy theorists speculate about you, and everyone else goes about their daily lives. But the moment we confirm your existence, 3 things will happen immediately. First, every religious fanatic on the planet will either declare you demons or messiahs, and both groups will want to either kill you or worship you, neither of which sounds particularly comfortable. Jake began pacing, getting into his rhythm. Second, every government on Earth will demand access to your technology, your knowledge, and probably your DNA. They will want to weaponize everything you have got, because that's what humans do. We see something new, we immediately figure out how to kill people with it. And third, Velkinth asked, though Jake suspected the alien already knew where this was going. Third, the average human will lose their goddamn minds. Markets will crash, governments will fall, and we will probably have 3 or 4 new world wars before breakfast. The only thing scarier to humans than the unknown is the known that they can't control. There was a long pause as Ambassador Velkinth processed this. Around them, other Keth had stopped their conversations to listen, their forms shifting and flowing like living mercury. Your assessment is accurate, the ambassador finally admitted. We have observed your species' historical responses to contact with other human cultures. The pattern is concerning. Exactly, Patricia said, seizing the moment. The integration protocol exists to prevent that kind of catastrophic disclosure. We introduce concepts gradually, through fiction, scientific speculation, and controlled leaks. We let the idea of extraterrestrial life become normal before we confirm it's real. How long? Velkinth asked. 20 years, maybe 30. We need at least 1 full generation to grow up with the possibility firmly embedded in their worldview. Jake watched the alien's form shift and flow as it considered this. The Keth were refugees, survivors of a war that had consumed most of their home system. They'd arrived in Earth's solar system in 1987, their ships barely holding together, carrying the last remnants of their civilization. The U.S. government had made first contact not through any grand plan or preparation, but because a janitor at a Deep Space Network facility had noticed some unusual signals and decided to investigate rather than report them. What followed was the most hastily improvised first contact in history. The Keth had been expecting either destruction or salvation, but instead they got bureaucracy, non-disclosure agreements, and a subterranean diplomatic complex in the middle of nowhere. There's another matter, Velkinth said, breaking Jake's reverie. The harvester ships have been detected at the edge of your solar system. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Jake felt his stomach clench into a tight knot. The harvesters were the reason the Keth had fled their home system, the reason they traveled across the galaxy as refugees. They were a species that consumed entire worlds, stripping them of resources, biological matter, and anything else of value before moving on to the next target. How long do we have? Patricia asked, her diplomatic composure cracking slightly. Their scout ships will reach the outer planets within 6 months. The main fleet will arrive within 2 years. Jake ran a hand through his hair, trying to process this information. So let me get this straight. We have got a species of galactic locusts heading our way, and our big plan is to spend the next 20 years slowly introducing the concept of aliens to a planet that can't even agree on basic scientific facts. The situation has evolved, Keth acknowledged. So what's the new plan? Because I'm pretty sure the harvesters aren't going to wait for us to finish our careful integration timeline. Patricia was already moving toward the communication console. We need to contact the Joint Chiefs immediately, and the President, and probably the UN Security Council. Wait, Jake said, a terrible thought occurring to him. How long have you known about this? There was a pause that lasted just a fraction too long. The first detection was confirmed yesterday. Bullshit. Jake's voice was flat, certain. You have known longer than that. How long? Another pause. 3 weeks. Jesus Christ. Jake sat down heavily in the nearest chair. 3 weeks. You have known for 3 weeks that humanity is about to face an extinction-level threat, and you are just mentioning it now. We hope to resolve the matter diplomatically before involving your species. Diplomatically? With a species that eats planets. The harvesters are not unreasonable. They can sometimes be negotiated with. Jake stood up abruptly. Negotiated with? What kind of negotiation involves letting a species consume your homeworld? The kind where the alternative is complete annihilation. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Jake looked around the room at the assembled Keth, really seeing them for the first time. These weren't just refugees. They were survivors of genocide, the last remnants of a civilization that had been literally consumed by an unstoppable force. What did you offer them? Jake asked quietly. Safe passage through the system in exchange for leaving Earth untouched. And they said no. They said no. Patricia had finished her call and rejoined the conversation. All right, I have got emergency sessions being called at the highest levels. We are looking at full disclosure within the next 72 hours. Full disclosure. Jake felt like he was falling down a rabbit hole lined with nightmare fuel. We're going to tell the entire planet that aliens exist. They've been hiding in Nevada for 40 years and, oh, by the way, we are all about to be eaten by space monsters. The alternative is facing the harvesters with a planet full of people who don't even know they exist, Patricia said grimly. Fair point. Jake turned back to Ambassador Keth. So what exactly are we dealing with here? What do the harvesters want, and how do we stop them? The alien's form darkened, shifting from translucent silver to something approaching black. The harvesters are not driven by malice or hunger, as you might understand it. They are gardeners in a sense. They believe the universe is overgrown with inefficient life forms, and they prune it back to allow for better growth. Better growth of what? Themselves. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. So they're not just conquering species. They are replacing them. In a manner of speaking, they absorb biological matter, technological innovations, cultural knowledge, and anything else of value, then use it to create improved versions of themselves. Improved how? More efficient, more adaptable, more capable of surviving in the cosmos. Jake looked around the room again, seeing the Keth in a new light. And your people? What do they take from your world? Everything. The word carried a weight of loss that hit Jake like a physical blow. Our cities, our technology, our art, our history. Most importantly, they took our genetic material and our collective memory archives. Meaning they now possess the accumulated knowledge and experience of our entire civilization. They know our weaknesses, our strengths, our methods of warfare and defense. And they will use that knowledge to be more effective against the next species they encounter, which would be us, which would be you. Jake sat back down, his mind reeling. So not only are we facing a species that eats planets, but they have been studying us through you. They know everything about human capabilities, technology, psychology, everything. Not everything, Keth said. We have been selective in our communications. Selective how? We may have neglected to mention certain aspects of human nature that we felt were not relevant to peaceful coexistence. Patricia leaned forward. What aspects? Your species' remarkable capacity for violence when threatened. Your ability to create innovative solutions under pressure. Your tendency to ignore seemingly impossible odds and proceed anyway. Jake felt a grim smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. You didn't tell them about the whole humans are crazy thing. We felt it was unnecessary information. Ambassador, Jake said, standing up and walking over to the observation screen showing the star field above them. I think you just gave us our first real advantage in this fight. The harvesters were coming. They expected to find a primitive species hiding in the shadow of a more advanced civilization. They were expecting fear, surrender, or at best, a token resistance. What they were going to get was 8 billion humans who had just learned they were not alone in the universe, and that something out there wanted to eat their planet. Jake had a feeling the harvesters had never encountered anything quite like humanity when it was properly motivated. This was going to be interesting 72 hours later. Jake Morrison stood in what used to be the most classified briefing room on Earth, watching the President of the United States try not to hyperventilate while staring at Ambassador Keth. The alien had thoughtfully shifted to a more humanoid appearance for the occasion, though the floating, semi-transparent thing still looked like something out of a fever dream. So let me get this straight, President Mitchell said, his voice steady despite the fact that his hands were shaking slightly. We have been hosting alien refugees in Nevada for nearly 4 decades, and now their enemies are coming to eat our planet. That's the gist of it, sir, Jake replied, trying to keep his tone professional while internally screaming. The president turned to Patricia. And our plan is to tell everyone on Earth about this. How exactly? Carefully, sir. Very carefully. Around the room, the assembled members of the Joint Chiefs, various cabinet members, and international representatives were having their own quiet mental breakdowns. The Secretary of Defense looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. The British representative kept muttering something about tea and proper protocols. The Russian delegate had simply lit a cigarette despite the no-smoking signs and looked resigned to whatever fresh hell was about to unfold. The disclosure protocols are already in motion, Patricia continued. We are coordinating with major news networks, scientific institutions, and government agencies worldwide. The announcement goes live in 6 hours. 6 hours, the president repeated. 6 hours to prepare 8 billion people for the fact that we are not alone in the universe and also probably about to die horribly. When you put it like that, it does sound a bit rushed, Jake admitted. Ambassador Keth flowed closer to the conference table. If I may, your species' reaction may not be as catastrophic as you fear. Humans have shown remarkable adaptability throughout your history. Have you met humans? Jake asked. We had riots over toilet paper shortages. We're going to tell people that aliens exist and planet eaters are coming. I'm pretty sure the grocery stores are going to be interesting places for the next few weeks. The president stood up and walked to the large display screen showing a real-time map of the world. What about our defenses? Military capabilities? General Harrison, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, cleared his throat. Sir, our current military technology is inadequate for this type of threat. We are essentially bringing knives to a gunfight with beings who consider solar systems as snack food. But, Patricia interjected, we do have options. The Keth have been sharing certain technologies with us over the years. We have made significant advances in materials science, energy generation, and propulsion systems. How significant? The president asked. Significant enough that we have already begun retrofitting our most advanced military installations with Keth-enhanced defensive systems. Significant enough that we have prototype weapons that could, theoretically, damage harvester ships. Theoretically. It's better than nothing, sir. Jake's radio crackled. Morrison, we need you in communications. The first wave of global broadcasts is about to begin. Copy that. Jake turned to the president. Sir, with your permission, I'd like to monitor the initial public response. Someone needs to keep track of how badly this is going to go sideways. Granted. And Morrison, try to keep the panic to a minimum. I will do my best, sir. Jake made his way through corridors that were now bustling with activity as Area 51 transformed from a secret facility into the de facto headquarters for humanity's first interstellar war. The communications center had been expanded to include multiple monitoring stations tracking news feeds, social media, and emergency services worldwide. Morrison, the voice belonged to Dr. Amanda Torres, the facility's chief scientist and the person responsible for most of the technological advances they'd made using Keth knowledge. Thank God you are here. We are getting some very interesting readings from the Harvester Scout ships. Define interesting. They have changed course. Instead of heading directly for the inner planets, they're taking a more cautious approach, almost like they are being careful. Jake frowned. Careful how? They're scanning everything. And I mean everything. Every satellite, every space station, every piece of debris in orbit. It's like they are looking for something specific. Or someone specific, Jake muttered, thinking about the Keth refugees hidden beneath the Nevada desert. The main display screen flickered to life, showing the president addressing the nation from the Oval Office. Jake felt his stomach clench as the moment of truth arrived. My fellow Americans and citizens of the world, the president began, his voice steady and authoritative. I speak to you today to share information that will fundamentally change our understanding of our place in the universe. On the smaller monitoring screens, Jake could see similar broadcasts beginning in countries around the world. Prime ministers, presidents, and premiers all delivering variations of the same impossible message. For the past 37 years, the United States government, in cooperation with our international allies, has been in contact with an extraterrestrial species known as the Keth. The social media feeds exploded. Jake watched in fascination as trending topics shifted in real time. Aliens real, Area 51 confirmed, government lies, we are not alone, and unfortunately, fake news, alien hoax, all climbing the charts simultaneously. These beings are refugees, the president continued, survivors of an interstellar conflict who sought sanctuary in our solar system. They have lived peacefully among us, sharing knowledge and technology that has advanced human civilization in countless ways. Stock markets are crashing, reported one of the technicians monitoring financial feeds. Emergency services are being overwhelmed with calls, added another. And apparently someone in Florida is trying to marry an alien, Dr. Torres said, looking at her screen with bewilderment. They haven't even seen one yet. It's Florida, Jake shrugged. They'd try to marry a hurricane if it held still long enough. The president was getting to the hard part now. However, we now face an unprecedented threat. The same hostile force that drove our allies from their home system has detected their presence here and is approaching Earth with the intent to harvest our planet's resources and eliminate human civilization. The monitoring screens went crazy. Panic indicators spiked across every major city on Earth. But oddly, Jake noticed the panic wasn't uniform. Some regions seemed to be handling the news better than others. Fascinating, Dr. Torres murmured, pulling up demographic analysis. Look at this. Areas with higher science fiction consumption are showing lower panic indicators. Places with strong gaming cultures are actually showing increased recruitment inquiries for military services. You are kidding. I'm not. It's like certain populations were psychologically prepared for this scenario. Jake thought about that. Decades of movies, books, games, and TV shows about alien invasions, space wars, and humanity fighting for survival. Maybe the integration protocol had been working better than anyone realized, just not in the way they'd planned. His radio crackled again. Morrison, get down to level 9. We have visitors. Level 9 didn't officially exist. It was where they kept the really classified stuff, the things that were too dangerous or too advanced for even Area 51's normal security protocols. Jake had only been there twice before, and both times had left him with nightmares. The elevator descent felt longer than usual, giving him time to wonder what fresh hell awaited him 9 levels beneath the Nevada desert. When the doors opened, he was greeted by the sight of Director Wells in animated conversation with 3 figures he didn't recognize. Ah, Morrison, Patricia said, turning toward him. Meet our new allies. The three figures were humanoid, but clearly not human. The first was tall and lean with skin that looked like polished obsidian and eyes that seemed to contain actual stars. The second appeared to be made of living crystal, each movement creating tiny chimes that somehow formed words. The third was the most unsettling, a being that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making it difficult to look at directly. "Let me guess," Jake said. "More refugees?" "Not refugees," the obsidian skin being said, its voice carrying harmonics that resonated in Jake's chest. "We are the Accord. We have been watching your species for some time." "Great. More watchers. Exactly what we needed." The crystal being chimed what might have been laughter. "Your sarcasm is noted and appreciated, Captain Morrison. It is one of the traits that brought you to our attention. We represent a coalition of species that have successfully resisted the harvesters," the dimensional being said, its words seeming to come from several directions at once. "We offer alliance." Jake looked at Patricia, who nodded grimly. "They have been monitoring our communications since the president's announcement. Apparently, humanity's response to learning about the harvester threat has been unique." "Unique how?" "Most species," the obsidian being explained, "respond to news of the harvesters with despair, resignation, or attempts to flee. Your species has responded by immediately beginning to plan how to fight them. And that's unusual, unprecedented," the crystal being chimed. "Within minutes of your president's announcement, your military began strategic planning sessions. Your scientists started theorizing about harvester weaknesses. Your entertainment industry began producing propaganda designed to boost morale. Your civilian population began volunteering for military service in numbers that exceed your recruitment capabilities." Jake felt a strange sense of pride mixed with terror. "So we are either brave or stupid." "Both," the dimensional being said. "It is a combination that makes you extremely dangerous to the harvesters." "Dangerous how?" "The harvesters succeed through psychological warfare as much as technological superiority," the obsidian being explained. "They expect their targets to surrender or flee when faced with overwhelming odds. They do not expect their targets to immediately begin planning counterattacks." Patricia pulled up a holographic display showing real-time data from around the globe. "Look at this. Within 6 hours of the announcement, we have had over 50 million applications for military service. Universities worldwide are reporting record enrollment in physics, engineering, and computer science programs. The tech industry has pivoted entirely to defense research. We are seeing global cooperation on a scale that's never existed before. It's like the entire planet has declared war on something they have never seen," Dr. Torres added, joining the group. "The economic indicators are bizarre. Instead of collapse, we're seeing a massive mobilization economy forming. It's World War II on steroids." The crystal being chimed again. "This is why we believe your species may succeed where others have failed. The harvesters have never encountered a species that responds to existential threat with aggressive innovation and unified purpose." "What kind of help are we talking about?" Jake asked. "Technology sharing," the obsidian being replied. "Strategic intelligence, coordinated defensive planning, and most importantly, proof that the harvesters can be defeated. You have beaten them before. We have survived them. Our coalition represents 12 species that have successfully repelled harvester incursions. But we have never eliminated them entirely. They retreat, regroup, and return stronger. But you think we can do better? We think you might be crazy enough to try something different." Jake laughed, surprising himself. "You know what? You are probably right." The dimensional being shifted, its form stabilizing slightly. "There is something else. The harvester fleet approaching your system is not their standard invasion force. It is their primary fleet, containing their most advanced ships and their leadership hierarchy, meaning they consider your species a significant enough threat to deploy their full military capability." Jake felt his blood run cold. "Wait, they're bringing everything they have got. Everything. How is that possible? We just found out they existed 3 days ago." The obsidian being's star-filled eyes seemed to dim slightly. "They have been studying your species for far longer than that. Through your entertainment media, your global communications, your response to crises throughout your history. They expected you to be easy prey. And now they are concerned enough to commit resources they have never risked before. Patricia was studying the display screens showing global response patterns. So we have essentially talked our way into the biggest fight in galactic history. Essentially, yes. Jake walked over to one of the monitoring stations and pulled up the latest news feeds. The planet was transforming before his eyes. Every major city had recruiting stations with lines around the block. Scientists were collaborating across international boundaries that had been barriers for decades. The internet was full of technical discussions about theoretical weapons, defensive strategies, and logistics planning. You know, he said, turning back to the assembled aliens, I think they picked the wrong species to mess with. The crystal being chimed what was definitely amusement. That is what we are hoping. Ambassador Keth appeared in the doorway, moving with unusual urgency. The scout ships have begun active scanning of Earth itself. They will detect our presence here within days. Good, Jake said, surprising everyone in the room. Good, Patricia asked. Yeah, good, because I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of secrets and protocols and careful integration timelines. Jake looked around the room at the assembled beings from across the galaxy. The harvesters want to harvest Earth? Fine, let them come. But they're going to find out that humans don't make very good crops. Captain Morrison, the dimensional being, said, Are you suggesting what I think you are suggesting? I'm suggesting we stop running and start hunting. These harvesters have been terrorizing the galaxy for who knows how long, consuming entire civilizations without consequence. Maybe it's time someone showed them what it feels like to be prey. The room fell silent. Then, slowly, the obsidian being began to make a sound that Jake realized was laughter. Yes, it said. Yes, I believe your species would do very well indeed. Outside, Jake could hear the sound of aircraft landing and taking off as Area 51 transformed from a secret facility into the headquarters of humanity's first interstellar military alliance. The harvesters were coming, expecting to find another easy target. Instead, they were going to find 8 billion humans who had just learned they weren't alone in the universe and had decided that was absolutely fine with them, as long as everyone understood that Earth was not on the menu. Jake Morrison smiled grimly and headed for the armory. It was time to get to work. The war for Earth was about to begin, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy exactly why they should never have picked this fight.